This is Dr. Yolanda McCune, and the recording you're about to listen to is of my husband Gary sharing life stories with the Ladies Leadership Group on Wednesday mornings. In the Hebraic tribes, Gary relates to the tribe of Zebulun. He is the businessman, the one that God created to make wealth for the kingdom. I relate more to the Issachar tribe. I know the times and the seasons of God. As you study the Word, you'll find out that those two tribes are often, if not always, joined together so that they can accomplish God's mission. In Luke chapter 4, starting with verse 16, Jesus is taking the scrolls in the synagogue in Nazareth, and what he is doing is reading what is written in Isaiah 61, verse 1 through 3. And as he read, he says he unrolled the scroll and read where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has anointed me to be hope for the poor, freedom for the brokenhearted, and new eyes for the blind, to preach to prisoners. You are set free. I have come to share the message of Jubilee, for the time of God's great acceptance has begun." It's interesting that after he rolled up the scroll and he sat down, everybody was looking at him with wonder, and he added, "These scriptures came true today in front of you." The interesting thing about Isaiah 61 is that it was prophesying that Jesus would come as prophet, priest, and king. A prophet comes to preach the new season of grace. The priest comes to heal. And the king, he comes to decree and herald peace and freedom to the captives. We have always, Gary and I, recognized that I'm the one who likes to speak in front of big groups or small groups or whatever. Gary, not so much. He would rather work the crowd, as we say, by greeting and hugging and loving on each one to bring peace and freedom, because he always identified as the king, the one to make wealth, but the one who wanted to bring peace and freedom. And I've identified as that priest, the one who wants to come and heal everyone and declare the new season of grace. So enjoy the recording.
Well, thank y'all for coming today. I said here's a perfect example of a guy popping off and sticking his foot in his mouth. So we were at leadership there the other night, and everybody was volunteering their time to cover for Yolanda while she was convalescing. Everybody picked up Sunday, everybody picked up Wednesday, and said, "We don't have anybody for this Wednesday." And probably Lori, she probably popped off. So Gary can sit up there and talk on Wednesday and defend himself for all the stuff that Yolanda has said. And I probably made some comment that, right, sure, you can see me doing that. Now, Lori probably knew that was a joke. Apparently Yolanda didn't. So it's just kind of open season on Gary today. But I thought that probably what I'd do a little bit, we've known each other really for quite a long time, but how much do we really know of each other? I mean, what's our background? Where do we come from? How did we form the opinions that we've had? What was really kind of the basis that made us who we are today? So I just kind of wrote down some notes here, and you'll see me looking on that, because one of the last things Yolanda says, it's not your version, it's your memory that's screwed up. So I've got a little bit of sequences there about how everything might come together here. But I grew up out at Boise City out in the Panhandle, and if you're all familiar with Cimarron County or that part, it's the last town before you go to Colorado. That's how everybody swings down around the courthouse and goes to Colorado. But it's a population, it's got about 2,200 people in the whole county. It's half the size of Perkins, really, as far as that area. And to say it was probably like Mayberry would really not be too terribly far-fetched from when I grew up there. We got on our bikes in the morning, we rode where we wanted to, we'd come home at night for dinner. If we happened to be at somebody's house for lunch, their mom fed us. If we happened to be there in the afternoon, we had cookies. So, it was just kind of a laid back, pretty calm and peaceful existence that was there. I was the oldest of 8 kids, so my dad was a carpenter and built homes there in town.
Explains a lot.
Yeah. So, not a lot of growth growing with, 2,200 people. Well, at that time, there may have been about 4,000 people in the whole county because it's been declining pretty steadily over the years. Mom worked at the abstract company and would type abstracts, all the legal descriptions and stuff like that on a old manual typewriter. So I don't see how she ever got all that done, but she was pretty smart and was the church secretary. So when everybody in church, they're always asking for your testimony, I really didn't have one. I grew up in a loving home that met all my needs. Everybody in the county was socioeconomically on about the same plane. Had people that farmed or ranched, 100 sections of land, but, they were just the same old common people as all the rest of us. So always kind of considered us kind of the poorer middle class, but everybody was right there in that same area. We may have hand-me-down clothes or any of that, but that was just the way it was. But we had lifelong friendships. I recently held our high school class reunion over there at the house, and we had 16 of the graduates of the 43 show up there for the reunion. And just trying to think of those 16, there was probably 10 or 12 of those that I was in the first grade with. So, so that's how long that really kind of spreads out. I played sports, but I was not a good athlete. I was probably on the football team, I was the nose guard because I was 140 pounds and 5'10", so I was the second biggest guy on the team. So our linebacker we'd say he was 200 pounds, but he was really about 190. So we would, right. So we would have made a better wrestling team than we would a football team anyway, for sure. But I was the first to sit up there and to go to college. I knew that, there really wasn't anything really out there that in Boise City that I was probably going to do. And I didn't really know what my aspirations were, but I knew it was going to be something someplace else. Now, this was in the 60s as far as going to college and going through high school during the hippie movement and the free loving and the wildfire children and the Vietnam War. And so a lot of turmoil and stuff really during that time, but we were really pretty naive and pretty protected there. So going up to OSU instead of going out to Panhandle at Goodwill was kind of a leap of faith in itself. I got scholarships to be able to go the first year of school and had worked and saved money and stuff like that to do that. Because as the eldest of 8, I had to put myself through school and work. And that wasn't an issue because I was always kind of used to that anyway. And how I did that really during time at OSU is that the first summer I went back home and helped Dad at the concrete plant. So he'd send me out with a cement truck or a finished concrete or something like that. So I'm pretty sure in the back of his mind he was motivating me to stay in school and figure out that I didn't want to finish concrete all the rest of my life. So,
And it worked.
And it worked. but I'm not real sure that I did anything really much easier, because the next 3 summers I sold Bibles door to door for Southwestern, and that was a real experience on that.
Yeah.
So growing up out there in kind of an isolated, secured area out in there in the Panhandle, and in my first assignment that first summer was to go to Williamsburg, Virginia, and we'd work 80 hours a week and give about 30 canned presentations every day, because it was a series of exposures and in numbers as far as what you sold and what you would be able to realize at the end of the summer that you were able to make. So that was an eye-opening experience there. And then the next summer I went to Indiana, outside of Indianapolis, and did the same thing. So I was not the top producer, but they had a nickname of Mr. Moneybags. That was my nickname. So we made enough money to be able to go to college. And that year, the year before Yolanda and I got married, I was able to buy a 1972 brand new Oldsmobile Cutlass. So, and still go to school. So you're making $15,000-$20,000 a year as during the summer, when that was almost what an engineer or something was making during that time. So it was a lot of hard work, but it was a good discipline, and a lot of the things I learned at that time I carried on throughout my whole life there with it. Then that third summer, Yolanda and I were married, and we went to Knoxville. So we were at right outside of Knoxville, between Gatlinburg and that area. So that was really kind of a neat experience, but she never saw me. I mean, I'd get up and be gone for 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and then come back. But in that apartment that we lived there, we probably had the most expensive furniture that we ever had, because I would go ahead and purchase a lot of my books and everything to save freight, go ahead and load those up in the car, and then take those to our assignment out there. So we had boxes of family Bibles and Bible commentaries and Nave's Bibles. We just put a sheet over it for a coffee table, or a tablecloth over it for a dining room, or we had end tables, and we everything but the bed, but it was also the box springs for the bed. So, but one story that she really likes on that experience was we had just gotten moved into the apartment, and we'd been there that one night or 2 nights, and it was just exactly like our apartment that we had here in Stillwater, but it was a mirror image of it. So it just completely flipped over. So one Sunday morning early, it was probably about 5 or 6 o'clock there, her mom calls, and the phone rings, and the phone's in the living room. We didn't have cell phones or anything there. It was hanging on the wall in there. So I hop up out of bed, and I just run in there through the door, which I thought was the door out to the hall, but it was the door into the closet. And I sat up there fumbling around through there, half awake and everything, tearing everything down on that. And then she's no help. She's over there laughing and hoo-hawing. And then, so if I would just gone the other way, I would have gone right on into the hall. But, I had in my mind the same apartment that I'd gotten up for the last semester there in Stillwater. So she got a big hoot out of that. But probably what she really didn't necessarily mind is that we moved about every 4 months. So by the time we were in the semester, and then we went out there to the summer, and then we came back, and then I graduated. And so with that 4 months, and then in '72 I graduated, and we went to Houston. And taking a small town hillbilly girl to Houston. You can kind of see maybe kind of where that went, where she was used to her closest neighbor being a mile away and a 3,000 acre ranch and all of that, and she didn't have a car because I was out making sales calls and I had the car, and so she was pretty well just stuck there in the apartment that whole time. So she needed an attitude adjustment several times. Right. But probably the deal that kind of capped that part of it off was I had 5 fender benders in one day. So everybody in Houston drives like I do. So they'd sit up there and just look right over at you and then just change lanes and run right into you. Or look over here and they'd change lanes and run into you. So we thought it was pretty well time to be able to get out. And
5 in one day.
5 in one day. They weren't big things, but just enough to be irritant, just a little bit. And
Welcome to Texas.
welcome to
Now go
Texas. Yeah, right. So the last one was my fault, though. I topped the top of the hill, and it had been raining, and I hit my brakes, and there's a little VW down there at the stop sign. I just kind of slid on down the hill and kind of tapped the back end of it a little bit. But Yolanda probably told you a little bit about how we got married, or how we dated, or how we met, or any of that.
We want to hear your side.
You want to hear my side? Okay. Well, it goes back a little bit. There was probably in about 70, we were married in 72, so this probably would have been the spring of 70, or the fall of 70. Yolanda and a couple of her girlfriends had come over to the student union because I was the executive director of the fraternity systems there for the campus area. And so I had a little office up there, and my fraternity brother had told this girl that Gary can find that information out for you. And what they were trying to find out was that this other girl had a little crush on this guy, but there was something just kind of off on him a little bit, and she wanted to find out a little bit more about him. So we got into the student records and found out that, yeah, he was married, so her suspicions were a little bit, were right. And and that was about the only experience that I'd had with her. And then the next year, Debbie, the girl that was with Terry and Yolanda, I thought from last year, she's kind of cute. And she had worked that summer with one of my fraternity brothers. And he was down at OU doing his physical therapy schooling. And he was feeling kind of sorry for her because she didn't know anybody here. He said, well, why don't you take Deb out for a Coke date or something like that? And, they were just kind of just friends and work associates. But little did he know that she really had a pretty big crush on him. And so she finally agreed that she'd go out to a Coke date to Sonic there with me, but she wouldn't go alone. So she took Yolanda there with her. And so during that whole time, Yolanda and I visited more than Deb and I did, and Yolanda thought that Deb was really kind of treating me kind of rough because she really didn't want to be there. I mean, she was kind of snobbish. She was from Bartlesville, sometimes they get a little bit. It kind of explains a little bit of some of that on there. But then ever since that Coke date, Yolanda and I started dating there, and that was in September of 71, and I proposed October on my birthday in that same year, and then we were married that next January in 72. So everybody at McCune was pretty sure that she was pregnant. With all that, quick turnaround and stuff that's on there. But then that Christmas there before we got married, she'd gone to McKee and I'd gone back to Boise City, and I was just stir crazy out there. So that's when I went out to the shop and I took a little jigsaw and I made a map of the world. And you probably may have seen it hanging on our living room wall there at the house, and it hung on every wall, every place that we lived or moved. And I told her that, you know, I'd take her around the world. And so we been to all 50 states and all but one of the Canadian provinces, and I think 47 countries,
Wow.
and 6
That's great.
continents. So kind of held true to that promise anyway, as far as on that. When we got married, you know, Yolanda always liked to say we were poor. You know, I don't like that statement. We were never poor. There are plenty of times we didn't have money, but we were never poor. So, you know, that's a different mindset to me than kind of really on what she talked about. So when we got married, you know, one of those times we didn't have the money, so we didn't go on a honeymoon or anything. So we had an apartment. Her mom and dad furnished us the apartment for school, and that was their contribution to our educational part of it. So we just came up that week before school started, and so we were just happy as a lark up here and just spending time up here in Stillwater. We'd go down and get tacos at the Taco Hut, and that was our honeymoon dinner or something like that. And it really got to be our anniversary dinner for several years. We'd just go to the Taco Hut, and then we'd have that, and then they finally shut that place down.
I think Mary retired.
That probably was what it was, yeah. But because of that, you know, Yolanda always reminded, well, I never had a honeymoon, and so we always had to go do something. I mean, when we went to Knoxville, we had to go to Gatlinburg and spend a weekend there. And normally I didn't take weekends off of work. It's hard to get in 80 hours
Unknown caller.
and take out a Saturday or a Sunday. And Sunday was for business meetings that we would go to Richmond or Indianapolis or someplace and meet up with all the other sales teams that were around that area and compare notes and be in competition with somebody else on who sold the most or who had the most presentations and things like that. So there were several years that I sat up there and had to go on honeymoon someplace. So we came back to Stillwater, and I ran for the student senate and got that. And so I was active there on campus there while she was more active in studying. But she'll also tell you that when we got married, my grades went up and hers went down. So she wasn't really too terribly excited or anything about that. So whenever we finished school there in the 72, what I was doing in Houston, I was selling custom suits. So I would call on the elite of Houston, and we would go in and they'd come in and we'd tape them and measure them, and then after we had all of that on file, then we'd go to their office or we'd go to their homes and we'd analyze what they have in their closet and what they need to have to be a little bit more up to date, or what colors they needed, or well, we were talking about the colors earlier, what was their best color and stuff that's with that. And these were people like H.A. Lott that built the Astrodome, were Bud Adams that had the Houston Oilers, and you know, they were kind of out of my league for sure. And you know, they were buying 2 or 3 $2,500, $3,000 suits. You know, that was the price of a car. But they didn't really feel too bad about that because their wives were spending 3 times that. So they had the money. So, but just because of the size of the town and Yolanda not really having anything to do, and you know, I enjoyed my work there. It was fun, but it was really time to go do something else. And Yolanda had not completed her degree at that time I had, so she still lacked a little bit. So we came back to McCune and helped her mom and dad on the ranch there that summer. And they had a little thing we call the weaning house. It's a little shack that was up there in front, but it needed some work. So I built on a little addition on the side of it, cobbled it on, and put a bathroom and stuff in there because it didn't have that, and trying to get that all built up where we'd have someplace that we could live. But we never lived in that. We just were living with her mom and dad while that was being completed, but I didn't get it done quick enough before she needed to go back to school. So trying to, like I say, trying to get my version straight as far as the chronology of all this. But she finished up her degree, which was in home economics and family relations and child development. So she needed to do her student teaching because it was in the educational program. So we'd gone over to Warner to do that student teaching. Her and her friend Terry, the same girl that was trying to check on the married husband there from years before, they were still roommates with her and Deb and Terry. Now Deb and Dick, they did end up getting married, and they live in Florida and all of that too. The year after we had, so, and we still get an opportunity to go see them on a periodic basis. So it's worked out pretty well there for both of us, really. For both of us, I think, anyway. But Yolanda had we had a mobile home here in Stillwater, and we moved it down to Warner to do her student teaching, and then the lady that she was under on her student teaching, her dad passed away, and she had to leave in the kind of the middle of the semester. And Yolanda and Terry's time as far as student teaching had expired, but the school there had asked that Yolanda stay on to complete that school term for the kids and stuff was there. So they got clearance and everything for OSU, so she didn't have to go back to do her final weeks there at OSU. She just stayed there and complete the term there at Warner. And then after the student teaching, Terry figured out she did not want to be in education. So she never taught another day in her life on that. So, and I think they do that a little bit better now. I think they go ahead and have that student teaching more earlier in their careers to find out if that really is what they want to do, and kind of weed them out, and so they don't make the mistake of getting a 4-year degree in education. And I don't want to be in the classroom, so that would be kind of an abrupt come to Jesus moment, I guess. Mm-hmm. But while she was doing that, as she was teaching, I was refereeing basketball games for local high schools and stuff around there in tournaments. So I'd pick up odd jobs like that. And then when she finished that, she got a job in Vian as the home ec teacher that's there where she went to school. So it's, what does Jesus say in the Bible? It's kind of hard to come back and preach in your own hometown. You could change that preach to teach in your own hometown, and that's kind of tough there too, because she looked about as young as most of her students in her class. So, and I had basically kind of a part-time job with the Johnson O'Malley program where I would tutor junior high kids in math and science. And so I had a class of probably about 15 to 20 kids that they were from rough backgrounds. It was an Indian education program, so it concentrated on the indigenous student, and they got no support at home. I mean, you could send them home homework or something like that, and it'd never come back. So you'd sit up there and have to do the work and stuff there that was inside the class. So we would I learned more algebra teaching that semester than I ever did anything up at college or high school. But they would do their homework, and I'd sit over there at the front desk with my pocket knife, and I'd whittle out a little statue or a little something on that. Times were a little different back then, right? But we pretty well had kind of free reign, because these were kids that were disruptive in the other classes, and the teachers were more than happy to get rid of them and dump them out here and into another class. And so they didn't have that support structure and stuff that's on there either. So we pretty well do about whatever we wanted to. So we had discipline and stuff in that class where they may not have had in the others, but that's about the only way that we were going to be able to have any control in the classroom at all. And then when Yolanda was at Vian, that first semester, that second semester, she got pregnant with Ty. And you've heard probably her stories about, she was sick from day one on her pregnancy. So, she would throw up and have the morning sickness all 9 months. And she did that with all 3 boys. So she missed a lot of the second semester as far as of her teaching there, and so that kind of encouraged the board to dismiss her for the next year. And so I don't know if it's really so much the sickness that she had, or that the local banker's daughter wanted her job and she got it. So a little politics or something like that may have entered into the game on there too. But in any case there, she was unemployed, and we had Ty, and then a year later we were having Teague. So that was about the time that I was working in nearby Salisaw at a local pharmacy. So I was a pharmacy tech, and had a hospital supply store off to the side. And so whenever it's slow in the hospital supply side, I'd come over and I'd work in the pharmacy. And that became a little bit too familiar. The pharmacist got a little bit too comfortable with me being there, and the customers did too. So I would be opening up the pharmacy, and a lot of times I'd be closing it. That's illegal, if anybody wants to know. Right, yeah. And then one morning the state inspector came around and had a script, and so I was filling it. It was about 9 o'clock that morning or something like that. And he said, "Okay." He said, well, he introduced himself and told him who he was, and he said, really, you're one of the best dispensers that I've got in my whole area as far as accuracy and all that, but you're not a licensed pharmacist. So, and unless you find a different job here pretty quick, we're going to have file charges. So I said, okay, I'm out of here. All right. So then I opened up an insulation company there in Sallisaw. So we were doing spray foam, not like the spray foam we do now, but it was a polyurethane that went into the cavities of in the home, and setting up franchises in Arkansas and Oklahoma with a guy out of Fort Smith, and so that was really kind of odd jobs and stuff like that filled in during that time. And about this time, Yolanda was pregnant with Trey, probably about 6-7 months pregnant. And Mike and Kathy Brown came to visit with us. And, Mike and Kathy we had known for quite a long time because I had sold mobile homes with Mike up here in Stillwater whenever Yolanda was doing some of her other stint in trying to finish up her degree. And Mike had started Camco here, and he had on his mind that he and I'd go out on this little 12-acre lake that we had out there at the house by Yolanda's dream place. I mean, the mountains in the back and the 12-acre lake, and we moved in 2 used mobile homes and connected those for a hillbilly double wide. So, she was in hog heaven there. We even had coon dogs. So,
Wow.
but Mike said he wanted to go fishing, so we went out in the middle of the lake and we were fishing. He says, I can't handle all of what I want to do in Stillwater with Camco. I need some help. And want you to go ahead and come back to Stillwater and work with me on that. And I knew that was going to be pretty hard sell as far as with Yolanda, and getting hillbilly out of the hills is kind of a challenge after she finally gotten back there. And but she said, no, I'm not going. I'm just, you can go and do your thing, but me and the boys, we're going to stay right here. We're just perfectly content right here on the hill. And then her mom, I love my mother-in-law. her mom came up and she said, get your butt in there and start packing. There's no way you're staying here. And he said up there he wants to go, you go. And they had, she had followed Wendy everywhere where they taught in Colorado and Arizona and all that, because the teaching wages were a lot higher there than what they were in Oklahoma, and then they could come back and buy their ranch and have their ultimate goal. And I think she would even admit now that it was probably one of her better decisions was to pack up and go, but it was the hills dug in the dirt, because we got up here to Stillwater with an 8-month-old, a 1-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and be honest, I was a workaholic. We'd go to work about 7 in the morning, and it'd be 7 or 8 or so whenever we came back that night. But that business is still here today, 50 years anniversary this year. So it was beneficial and did make us a nice income, and we've been really blessed with that. But the workaholic part of it was really kind of tough on her. And she still hadn't quite finished up all of her degrees. She'd sat up there and worked on her master's with the summer classes, and then would take a course about each semester. And then when she got her master's, then her thesis was, well, it's been a long time since I read it. I did read it. I haven't read all of her book yet, but I have read her thesis part. But it got published in the Pediatric Journal of the American Medical Association for child development for pediatricians. So she would go to Tulsa and teach pediatricians how children actually developed, because they may have had 1 or 2 day courses on really how the developmental part of the child develops rather than just the physical part of it. So that was kind of interesting there for a time period. And I have joked about being kicked out of the best churches in Stillwater, and that's really pretty true. I mean, when I was at the fraternity, University Heights was just a couple of blocks away, so we could walk over there or take Mom to church or something like that. So we were there at University Heights. When we came back, we went over there to Hillcrest, and at Hillcrest, we were attending, but most of the congregation was, well, but they were elderly, let's just say that. There really wasn't many young couples. There wasn't any kids or anything like that. And they had this big empty building that they used for storage and stuff that was right there on campus. And we thought, well, if we're ever going to get any youth or any younger couples into there, we need to have a nursery, because we really didn't have a nursery there. So I gutted that building out there, and we made a nursery there with 4 different rooms and a reception area there that would accommodate 100 kids in that nursery. So we built that and completed it and started getting younger couples and stuff into Hillcrest there. And then Yolanda has probably shared with her experience of her Glorietta getting filled with the Holy Spirit and her time doing that. And then so when she came back, and the Holy Spirit isn't as welcome in some Baptist churches as what it really ought to be. So at that time we went over to Calvary, and that was when they were up there on Duck Street meeting there for a while, and we were there for a little less than a year, and then they decided they wanted to build a church. So we got involved in helping them build the church and stuff out there on McElroy, where they are there today. The boys were the first 3 people to be baptized there at Calvary. So we had that experience, and then went over to New Life, and I think there's several of you had that experience there too. And so we painted the building, or was on the finance committee and the eldership and everything there at the church there, and really it had fallen on some pretty hard times because they had not made any church payments or anything like that for really a few years. So we had to go down and negotiate with their the Pentecostal Holiness head office to go ahead and get that restructured and reorganized and repaid, and kind of bring that up from a financial standpoint to where it could go ahead and continue to work. And had a couple of pasture changes and a few things there, so, and it's still running and everything there today. Then Yolanda got a wild hair to start a dementia center. So, and was in the 13th, 14th year or something like that now, that from when we met at the house and where we are here today. So I told her, I said, okay, this is the last place I'm going, so I better get it right this time.
When
when did you get spirit-filled, if I may ask it?
Well, it was a little bit after, she had, she was crazy as a loon for that first.
Cage stage?
Yeah, that cage stage they talk about is a real thing. And it was probably, I don't know, I'd like to say I lose track of time, but maybe 3-4 months or so after that. I woke up in just a horrible dream. I was just standing up there in the bed and just sweat pouring down off of me and all that. And she said, "What in the world what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, don't really know for sure, but I had this nightmare that there was like Grim Reaper type of figures, and they were at the front of the door there at the house, and I knew that they were there for you and the boys, and so the only thing I knew, I jumped up and grabbed my shotgun, opened up the door, and just blew him away, and it just blood everywhere, and thought, okay." Then I'd go back to sleep. And then it was I don't think it was later that night. I think it was a night or two later. Well, no, I told her, I don't know what that was, but I think it's got something to do with that Holy Spirit junk that you've been talking about. And so she said, "Well, do you want that?" And I said, "Well, I better, because I don't want to go through this again." And so she sat up there and led me through what she thought was a proper way to indoctrinate, not indoctrinate, but invite someone to accept the Holy Spirit. And all she could get out of me, as verbal as I am, is a couple of clicks, click, 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 click. That's not it. You just keep working on that. So, right, yeah, that's not it. And so it was several nights later on that, and I've been practicing. I've been trying to get involved more with it, and then that woke up or had the dream this Grim Reaper was back, but up there at the door, and instead of grabbing my shotgun this time, I just went out there and I just opened the door and pointed at it. I mean, click, 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 and it just poof, and it was gone. And so then I had to admit to her that, hey, there may be something to this stuff that's on there. But that was frightening and enlightening all there at the same time. But
Wow.
so it's a little while after her experience and stuff on that, but it wasn't any real mountaintop scenic experience like that. So, but
I don't know, that sounds pretty mountaintop.
yeah, it is pretty mountaintop. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
There is a language in Africa that's a click, click.
There's
thing.
a
they're
lot of-
click, click.
yes, there
Yeah,
is.
right. Yeah.
But you didn't know that then.
I didn't know that then. I can communicate with some remote African tribe, I think, that does that. Let's see. But a couple of things there that kind of a little bit more on a personal note or something on there. And I don't know if it's a blessing or it's a curse, but I always kind of grew up, I guess, with a little bit of inferiority complex as far as where I was raised or what we were doing, or I wasn't the best student, or I wasn't the best athlete, or any of that. But if I was going to do something, it would seem like that it would be done better if I was leading it. And so I always had the motto kind of lead, follow, or get out of the way. I wasn't really very good at getting out of the way. And I'd have to really pretty well believe that who was leading was the right person for the job for me to follow. So I'd always tend to be in a position of leadership for about whatever group that I might be in. Like say when I was in the fraternity and stuff on there, I had it all geared up. I was in the IFC, which is their governing body for the fraternity systems. And then I was going to run for the president, and that had that all geared up for that end of that second semester, and then the elections would be the first of the semester of the next year. So I had my coalition and everything all built up and all that. But come to find out that on that second semester, most of the houses had their elections on what representatives they were going to send to IFC to represent their house. And there was about a 75% turnover in that. So a lot of my voting block that I had from the previous year, they weren't the representatives now. So I lost by a vote to get that presidency. And that kind of shocked me, and it shocked the Dean of Men, because he was wanting me to be in there. So that's the reason he appointed me as the executive director of the fraternities. So if I wasn't going to be the president, I just had the office up there with it. But it did kind of teach me a lesson about as far as on some campaigns and stuff on that. You know, timing is pretty well about everything. But whether it happened to be the home builders, I had to be the president. I mean, I don't know why, but it would just gravitate that way. If I was going to be in the Republican Party, I had to be the chairman, or for several years, and or the convention chair, or the home builders, the president of home builders. And while I was president, we did the Home and Garden Show and established that so that all the members had an opportunity to showcase their businesses and stuff at the Home and Garden Show. And it's generated a little over $1 million worth of income that has been distributed to local charities and organizations. So, you know, that's something that, I'm proud of. It wasn't just enough to be the chairman of the Republican Party. You had to run for the state Senate. And so I did that in '88. Took on the incumbent happened to be the chair of the Education Committee also at the time. So, the education block in the city of Stillwater is pretty strong.
Pretty big,
Yeah. But we had about 400 volunteers that helped us in that first race, and we got 49.8% of the vote.
Wow.
So, but still a loss. And
That's tough.
exposing yourself and your family and everything to a political campaign is you're really vulnerable. Right. And about the worst dirt they could usually come up with me is that Yolanda and the kids were in private school. So, that part of it was kind of a no-no on that part of it. But they couldn't find too much of anything else that was on there. But it threatened them enough that in 1990, that was in '88, in 1990, they redrew the district lines for the Senate district. And it started from Yale, came right down here by the fairgrounds, a quarter mile west of my house, and then all the way back to Yale. So it looked like a little panhandle strip that was cut out of there. So I was no longer in the Senate district. So in '92, if if I was going to go ahead and run again, I needed to move. And so we had made the decision that, yeah, we were going to run again. And I was serving on the CREC board at that time. And I wanted to go ahead and keep that position until I had to resign to file for the Senate seat. But to do that, there was only about 6 square miles that was common area that was both in the Senate district and the new Senate district and the CREC's district. And just so happened that a friend of ours, Glenn Holderreed over by Cushing, had a little cow lot that had utility service too, with water and sewer and electric and all of that, that he wasn't running cows in there anymore. So we bought a double wide trailer from Friendly's and moved it out there to that cow lot. Yeah, this was in December, but with all the rain and everything, they couldn't get the double wide in and get it set, because I needed to establish residency in that area to be qualified to file and run. So there was about a 6 to 8 week time frame right there between when that deadline was and when we could get the trailer there. So just pulled a little travel trailer in there, parked it there, and then I'd go over there and spend the night over there every night. Landon and the boys were still over here at the house here in Stillwater until we could get the double wide all set up and then moved back over there. And usually there would be somebody that would trail me every night over there to make sure that I was staying there, that I had some type of a residency requirement that was there. So that was a little bit interesting. So we ran that race and lost it too in '92. So our campaigning and that part was over. And so this was in November, and we were still living over there in the double wide there at Cushing, but we still had the house here. We had it up for sale, but it never sold. And then we came home from Christmas, and the big old smell of skunks were just all over everywhere. And Yolanda may have shared this story with you too on that, but we thought, oh good heavens, this is going to go ahead and get better. We opened up all the windows, tried to air everything out, and we spent the night there, that one night, and it was just horrible. So then we had to go ahead and move back over here to the house where we are now, and just stay there while we tried to put in ozone machines and everything to clear out the odor of the skunks. And Bill and Sons brought in a little ozone machine and said, we'll leave this here for a day or two and it'll all be gone. Okay, they left it a day or two and it wasn't any different. Brought in 4 more, set it in there, left it in there, and about a week later it's still not there. But it was permeated the house so much that you could open up the refrigerator, you'd smell it. You'd open up a carton of eggs, you'd smell it. You would crack open the egg and you would smell it.
Wow.
So we had, and I'm sure this in some of the duties that my guys really enjoyed, but I sent them over to start tearing out insulation out from underneath the mobile home and all that, because it looked like they just got in there and had World War III in there. It was just, there was dead skunks. They'd tear off insulation and the skunk would fall down. They didn't know if it was dead or alive or what, and set up traps and then catch some of them. And I don't know how many that actually ended up with that, but it was, but luckily the insurance did pay for it, because it was probably about $30,000 worth of damage and stuff by the time we
Wow.
repainted and recarpeted and cleaned up and everything else there that was with that. So we were back at the other house that hadn't sold, and it was the little red brick 3-bedroom house that you may have seen some old pictures of it. And I told Yolanda just kind of, draw up what you want your house to look like, and we'll do it. And so she and my brother, he was a draftsman, so they got really artistic on drawing out some blueprints and everything, and then drew out the house that we live in now. So I guess we're pretty lucky that we didn't sell it. So we had someplace really to be able to come back to. But
So you sold the double wide, the skunk house.
yeah, we did. We got it all cleaned up and marketable and all that. And well, Tammy Souders bought it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and I forget what her first husband's name was.
Mr.
Huh?
His first name was Mr.
Mr. Yeah,
Gosh.
Mr. Toddy's. But yeah, they bought it and I think moved it down by Shawnee or something on there. And when they were down there, so things just kind of
Small world.
keep coming around and stuff on that. Then I think it's probably about that time that the boys were older because they had helped with the campaign and stuff like that. And then Yolanda had gone down to, and they were still in private school. They were driving down to Shawnee every day to go to school. And Yolanda was teaching there because they needed her credentials as with her master's and all that to get accreditation for some of their programs and stuff that were down there in Shawnee. So she'd go down there and teach and help offset some of the boys' tuitions and stuff on that. And I need somebody to interpret some of my scribbling on this last part of it, as far as some of the writing. But
You're writing in the spirit, huh?
yeah, right.
Writing in tongues.
Writing in tongues and stuff on there, and it click, 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 and I don't know my Morse code really very well on that. So yeah, but I really do feel kind of blessed, and God's had His hand in a lot of things that I have been able to do. And like to feel that we made some contribution to individuals or to groups, and you get 72 years worth of participation. You like to think that it's been somewhat beneficial, and you kind of look around and see that maybe it has. We've got an existing church building here. My time at CREC, we were able to build a new building, get that established, and get internet to every rural household that is a member, kind of bring them up to, yeah.
Thankful for that.
Yeah, it really does make it nice, doesn't it? I can actually stream a TV program or be able to watch some football games or something
real
like
time.
that. In some real time. So, and with some of the failures on the Senate campaign, it was probably still one of the best things that happened, because everybody said don't get involved in politics, it'll ruin your business or something, and that was really about the best thing that ever really happened to my business. I mean, you're going to alienate 50% of the people, but you also get the support of another 50%. So, and
Integrity shines.
huh?
Your integrity shines.
Well,
It
thank you.
draws people.
Okay. Well, maybe that's the reason they always put me up there. I was the last man standing as far as some of those leadership positions. So, yeah. So,
No doubt.
no doubt. Yeah. But
That
I
was
was.
before you knew you had the ruler gift.
Well, yeah. Right.
That's
right.
the one that you excel in, isn't it? In
Well,
ruler pretty
it's
much
yeah, it's
taught
one
you.
of
Who
kind
knew?
of ruler servant.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of.
That's an
It
interesting
almost
combo.
seemed like it's an oxymoron there, isn't it? But yeah, but it really kind of works.
So for the last 60 years, you've been a ruler and didn't know it.
Yeah, I know it. Well, I was going to leave a little bit of time for question and answers, but I think I kind of rambled on enough.
I have a
Then,
question.
okay, you go
Were
ahead.
you ever in arts or entertainment or military or first responders? Because you've hit every other mountain.
Okay.
Okay, there's two. I don't know if I've heard.
Okay, in the arts and entertainment, I was usually the joker in the classroom. If that really helps on that,
That's got to count.
yeah, that's got to count somewhat on there. And it cost me a 9-week stint of in the 4th grade. The teacher set my desk out in the hall,
That's
and
military,
that
right?
was that was my station for 9 weeks.
Oh, my.
She had enough of me, and she just put me out there in the hall. And so the janitor and I had a really good relationship, and the other 4th grade teacher would take pity on me, and she'd have projects for me to come over and fix her stapler for her, or to go dust off the erasers or something. So she had some compassion for me. But as far as the military, I didn't serve in the military. During that time of the Vietnam and everything, they had the lottery. And so I had a very high lottery number in the upper 200s. So they said, we're never going to get down to that number. So you just go ahead and go to school and go to OSU and not worry about it. I did go ahead and take ROTC that first year because if I was going to get called up, I wanted to go in as an officer. I didn't want to go in as a grunt. So yeah, so that was the extent of my military, and it was not a glorious time. On the march, I couldn't tell my right from my left, so that part of
They
it.
said north and south, you'd have been fine.
I'd been just fine,
See,
but this
I'm not alone.
left, right, left, whatever.
Your other right.
Yeah, my other right. So yeah.
That's me.
So, but that was the extent of that. Now, a lot of my other classmates, they weren't quite so lucky, so they had several of them had to go to Vietnam and stuff on that, and served during that time, and didn't lose any of them there, but did lose a couple from Agent Orange and stuff like that on the residual effect of the war there. So that was kind of rough on them.
And he's always been the first responder. He's the one that you call when there's a water leak or there's scorpions or skunks.
Did a great job, Gary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's good.
We want you to come back next week.
The next week. Well, I'd have to rehash the other part of my notes that I didn't cover. Yeah,
But
that
next
skipped
week you
over.
just preach. You don't
Yeah.
have to do the history next time. You just preach.
You just preach.
It's nice hearing the
Yeah.
other side.
It is.
The other
Yeah.
perspective. It is. They line up. Y'all are good.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, after 50 years, I would hope so.
Mm-hmm.
You're working on
52.
52 now.
Yeah, 52 now. Yeah. Like I always like to say, been happily married 36
Oh, that's,
of the 52
that's a
years.
majority.
Right.
At least you're ahead now.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yolanda doesn't see the humor in that either most of the time. So I like to tell you, she's got no sense of humor.
Keep,
Yeah.
keep telling her, it'll grow on her.
You probably ought to just stop with and pray right there, Gary.
Edit that part out.
Before we go any farther in that direction. You better quit while you're ahead.
She